July the 5th, wildflowers and rushes. July is another astonishingly rich month for wildflowers. Many spring flowers are now just a memory, and others, which had their main flowering period earlier, are developing fruits with the occasional flower. All these are now joined by the late flowering species. One of the most attractive habitats to look for flowers this month is along the edges of rivers or lakes, closely followed by meadows and downland. Hedgerows, woodland, and waste areas are also good places. The latter may be less attractive than other habitats, but often harbours rare aliens and hybrids. Certain plant roots, such as thistles, mallows, mulleins, hemp nettles, and willow herbs, all seem to belong to this month. The same is true of various representatives among the composites, for example, the clovers and the vetches. Downland often provides the most pleasant plant hunting at this time of year. It is worth looking for rarer species, such as burnet saxifrage, field and crow garlic, samefoin yellow rattle, common calamint, Dyer's greenweed, and ploughman's spikenard. The flowers of Dyer's greenweed yield a yellow dye, which, when mixed with woad, provided a much more useful green dye. Ploughman's spikenard got its unusual name from being the poor man's equivalent of true spikenard, which was much sought after for its scent. The dried roots of both used to be hung in cottages to sweeten the air and kill fleas. The less frequented downs between Merstham and Kempsing are good places to look for these flowers, as well as the more popular Farthing Down. Wherever the ground is excessively grazed by rabbits, it is worth looking for hound's tongue. In this case, the English name refers to the shape and texture of its leaves. Other plants more commonly seen are wild basil, knapweeds, rock rose, and various types of scabious. The largest and most impressive of the scabious species is the devil's bit scabious, Successa pratensis. This grows up to 1 meter in height with rounded mauve rather than blue flowers. The field scabious, Nortia arvensis, and the small scabious, Scabiosa columbaria, both have blue flowers but can be separated more easily by their flower shapes. Those of the field scabious tend to be flatter than the small scabious, whose flowers are slightly more dome-shaped. Both grow together on Kempsing Down. Knapweeds, which look like small soft thistles, also stand out now. The common knapweed, Centaurea nigra, is the most common, identified by its small flower heads and mostly undivided leaves. The rarer sawwort, Ceratula tinctoria, looks similar but has highly toothed leaves, as its name suggests. It still hangs on in undisturbed grassland. The most handsome of the group is the much larger and impressive greater knapweed, Centaurea scabiosa. This also has divided leaves, which are not toothed but softly lobed. A similar-looking garden flower is the cornflower, Centaurea cyanus, which is easily distinguished by its piercing blue rather than typical purple of knapweed flowers. Beside the paths in areas of downland mentioned, vervain, Verbena officinalis, is quite common. This is another plant with a rich folklore. The Romans called it herba sacra, and on their feast of Verbinalia, they laid it on altars on which they were to carry out animal sacrifices. In Britain, the Druids included it in their lustral water, which was used much as holy water is used in churches today. Vervain was also thought to help people make more accurate prophecies, and so was popular with fortune tellers. Christians believed it was used to help staunch the blood from Christ's wounds. Being such a powerful herb, it was an obvious choice to put around children's necks to protect them against any illness. Other less visited patches of excellent downland, where the number of different species plants per square metre can approach 40 or more, are Quarry Hangers, Saltbox Hill, and parts of Happy Valley. Rushes, cub rushes, spike rushes, and bulrushes. Many of the plants we call rushes belong to several other different genera, and a few are actually sedges. The most recognisable are those dense clumps of boldly upright, narrow, tubular leaves with small clusters of flowers on the sides of similar-looking stems that indicate the land is probably poorly drained and difficult to farm. However, most rushes have their small, insignificant brown or black flowers set on quite rigid, often jointed branches at the end of their stems. As they are all wind-pollinated, they have no need for petals, and in many cases even their leaves are reduced to just scaly sheaths at the base of the stems. All in all, they are very easily missed. In fact, identifying them in the field is not for the faint-hearted, although their English names can often give a clue. It is always worth noting their size, colour, and with a lens, their fruit and flower. Occasionally, you may even need to split a leaf to see if it has any compartments of pith inside. July is generally a good time to look at them, as most are now either in flower or fruit. Although very much associated with marshy ground and wet heaths, they are also found at the edges of woods, fens, bogs, and even beside canals and in gardens. Good places to look for them are Wimbledon Common, which has 7 of our more common species, Perivale Wood, which has 5 species, and Islet Manor, which has 4. Economically, they have always been regarded as useless, as many are of poor nutritional value and livestock often refuse to eat them. However, other uses have been found, such as them being used for thatching, making mats, chair seats, and even ropes. There were even rush fairs in the past where bundles were sold to be used as strewing herbs before carpets were invented. One of Cardinal Wolsey's so-called extravagancies, which brought about his downfall, was that he changed the strewing herbs in his palaces once a week. They were laid on the floor and often scattered with flower petals. Another important use was the making of rush lights by the poor who couldn't afford candles. They would cut the leaves, then partially strip them before laying them in any old rendered fat left in the kitchen. Once left to dry, they were then capable of burning for as long as 5 hours, which must have been a godsend for many a poor Londoner in the depths of winter. The most common clumps of rushes we notice in the fields tend to be either soft rushes, Juncus effusis, hard rushes, Juncus inflexus, or the compact rush, Juncus conglomeratus. All have their flowers set at the side of their stems. If the stem is rolled between your fingers and thumb and has no ridges, it is likely to be a soft rush. If the leaves of the tussock are rather stiff and slightly bluish green, it could well be the hard rush, and if the flowers are compacted into a ball rather than falling loosely, then it is likely to be a compact rush. Another really common but much smaller rush, which is often the first you see, is the toad rush, Juncus biphonius. This is ubiquitous, even occurring on paths in gardens. It is slightly unusual for a rush, producing its repeatedly forked flower branches from quite low down on its stems, which only reach 10 centimeters in height. Then there are the less commonly encountered rushes, with flowers at the end of their stems, such as the heath, jointed, bulbous, sharp-flowered, blunt-flowered, and round-fruited rush. The heath rush, Juncus sclerosis, as you might expect, is found on heaths, and has basal tufts not unlike a chimney sweep brush. Brush. It also has pale margins to its flowers, sometimes giving it a silvery look. The jointed rush, Juncus articulatus, can sometimes cover large areas. It has a habit of lying down, then curving upwards to produce its flowers and egg-shaped fruits. The bulbous rush, Juncus bulbosus, is often first noticed half submerged in the water on boggy heaths. The sharp-fruited rush, Juncus acutiflorus, is similar looking but with distinctly pointy fruits. If you were to strip a leaf, you would find longitudinal compartments of pith. The blunt-flowered rush, Juncus subnodulosus, again is similar, but with much blunter tips to its fruits, and both longitudinal and cross compartments inside its stems. Because of these compartments, both these rushes have leaves that feel jointed along their length. The round-fruited rush, Juncus compressus, with its round fruit, is rare in our area and only likely to be encountered beside the non-tidal parts of the River Thames. Any rushes seen in salt marshes have a good chance of being the salt marsh rush, Juncus gerardii, and along canal towpaths, the slender rush, Juncus tenuis, can be found due to its sticky seeds getting attached to the shoes of canal boat owners. Our other rushes are quite varied in appearance, as they are often not true rushes at all. They are also difficult to identify, so much so they've even confused artists. Moses, who is supposed to have been found in bulrushes, is usually found in paintings in reeds or reed mace, and Sir Belvedere, who is said to have thrown Excalibur into the lake from a bed of bulrushes, is often depicted standing in irises. The true bulrush, Chenoplectus lacustris, is impressive enough in its own right. It regularly reaches 2 meters in height and has attractive clusters of round, slightly pointed reddish-brown flowers, so much so it is often planted as an ornamental around lakes. This group of rushes are often called club rushes. Other club rushes that might be seen are the bristle club rush, Isolepis cetaceus in Perivale Wood, the sea club rush, Scirpus maritimus on Erith marshes, and the floating crabrush, Eliogeton fluitans, floating in ditches. Spike rushes are altogether smaller and just really like stems with arrow-tipped flower heads. The common spike rush, Eliocharis palustris, can be seen growing on Rainham marshes. Lastly, it is worth mentioning the Japanese corkscrew rush, Juncus effusis spiralis. This is a novelty cultivar of our native soft rush. It has taken the natural tendency of some rushes to twist their stems to the limit, where they all just look like helical spirals.